So I'm Steve Ormerod, I'm Professor of Ecology at Baldock University, and Chair of RSPB Council, and I have an unchanging haircut.
I'm Becky Allen, Institute of Environmental Policy. I'm also on the RSPB Council, so I do everything Steve said.
I'm Becky, I'm a freelance journalist and the ES's press officer.
I'm Helen Roy and I work for the Centre for Hydrology, where I lead zoology and Baldock.
I'm Nigel Paul, Lancaster University. I think I've already put at least one person off of a career in universities, and I'm happy to answer any more questions. Swing one way or the other.
Bryony Pierce, I'm an environmental consultant with Baldock Intelligence.
Okay, so do we have any questions to start? You got a question?
I've got one question.
Oh, we've got some questions that were asked at lunch, okay.
Lady over here.
Okay, I was just wondering if any of you have heard of the M-Bio degree, so instead of doing an MSc, you do M-Bio. If any of you have heard good or bad things, or you can stay away from them, it's quite a new qualification. Anybody like to
I mean, there are a number of M-type schemes now. What makes an M-Bio different?
It's sort of halfway between like doing an undergrad and then postgrad masters, and doing a full undergrad master's. So it's just like 1 year is like a top up, and some unis are offering it, and it's just called M-Bio. I just wondered what people's opinions were if you've heard of it.
I can offer a family view actually. One of my 4 boys is doing a natural sciences environment. I think the master's route is an interesting one because you've had 2 contrasting perspectives this morning about whether it's valuable or not. My own master's degree is a conventional MSc, and there is never a day go by in my career but which I don't draw on the expertise that I learned, the skills I learned in that period. And I think whatever the nature of a master's type scheme, you look very, very closely at potential benefits. So there is a cost investment that people worry about at the end of their degree. That, of course, isn't present in the scheme that you're talking about because you buy into it right at the very beginning. The really major benefits come from skills enhancement, but it also comes from the contacts that you can make during the period that you spend working as part of your master's scheme, whether it's in consultancy sector, whether it's in the government research sector, whether it's in policy. And I think that's really worth grasping actually, that opportunity for an addition over a bachelor's degree and something that can take you further.
I think I'd agree with that. The key word is addition. It should give you something different, not just more of the same. I think, as Rick and Lee with Steve, you have to think about why you want to do a master's and what you want to get from it. And be very careful what you choose. Not just do a master's because it's the next step, which is what I think sometimes people do. It's all about choosing your own one.
Yeah, so I did a master's at Nottingham University in Environmental Science, and it had a lot more quantitative subjects within it. So for me, it increased my confidence enormously before going to a PhD as well. And then what I will say is at Ecological Hydrology, where we have 4 sites in hydrology, that I think about 350 scientists across those sites. Quite a lot of the scientists just have a master's, they don't have a PhD, and they may be field ecologists or the lab managers and lab ecologists, the group leaders of what I like to be ones with PhD. So a master's can be a fantastic career route into a research institute, and you may never have the aspirations to go on to do a PhD after that. You may be very happy to take that pathway. So I'm a strong supporter of the master's.
Would you say it depends on what it is you're hoping to do in the future, whether that's something that you're going to do a PhD?
Yeah, and also if you find a course that just looks really interesting to you, whether it be on the marine side or terrestrial side or improving your computational skills, then do it for that reason as well. But taking on board this financial cost of it. But yeah.
Just one other thing also, I think there is another aspect of investment that you probably need to be aware of, and that is that when you take on a master's anywhere, look very careful at the extent to which the institution you're going to will invest in you. Because I think there are a lot of universities now are quite keen to have the fees paid by students without necessarily returning the value in teaching and research investment and various other things. So look very carefully at that, but when you do go to a master's, be prepared to invest yourself in making your opportunities out of that step.
Okay, just before we go back to the questions, if I'm tying it back to so is an MBio, does that give you the same, well obviously it's going to be the same training, but does it stand you in the same place as a master's, pure master's would?
It'll still be a master's degree. Clearly, I'm being slightly careful what I'm saying, but picking up what Steve said, I think some universities are trying to offer new schemes and offer new routes to students and new ways of raising cash for universities. I think I wouldn't like to comment on any particular or specific scheme, but the advice to look very carefully and think about what you're going to get applies to whatever flavour of master's we're talking about.
Okay, thank you. Do you have any more questions? I'm going to go for this at front.
Would you recommend going from a bachelor's to a master's or doing an MBio directly, one after the other, or maybe taking some time out first, doing some experience, getting your hands dirty? What would you say?
Well, I would say that so I had a year between finishing my undergraduate course and taking my master's. It wasn't what I wanted to, because I didn't go on to the master's program. I wanted to straight away. But actually then I camped for a year and got some fantastic office skills that I thought was very dull, but I quite enjoyed it actually, and certainly my work processing improved. But I think if I had gone straight into a master's, I would have looked at every opportunity I possibly could have taken while I was there. I would have gone, and as I did, I put my foot in the consultancy industry. But you look to do your project across somebody else, collaborating, attend meetings, and get your hands dirty while you're doing your master's, is what I would say.
I think it also depends massively on how clear an idea you have of what you want to do. A lot of people I know have just kind of gone and done masters because they don't really know what they want to do, which is probably not the best idea. I think if you do a bit of work first, then you're more likely to have an idea of the additional skills that are useful to you. And there's certainly a possibility you want your own work to do a master's whilst you're working. People might pay for you to take time out and do a master's as well. So there are lots of options available.
I can't imagine anybody looking at a candidate for say a PhD and thinking, oh, they had a year out doing something. That's a disadvantage. But I think breadth of experience, if you employ it, is always worth it. So I don't think it'd ever be a disadvantage. Whether it would be a significant advantage depends on the job.
Yeah, I think I did my MSc 15 years after anyway, that kind of order of magnitude, and I went back into it just because I was really interested in the subject, and I really enjoyed it. I found the gap really, you know, it was a joy sitting down and having time and space to. I did it part time because I couldn't afford to do it full time. But having the time and space to go back into an academic environment and to do research and advice, I think there's ever a point not to. Don't think you're ever done and dusted.
I think one of the other points is that those paths aren't mutually exclusive in any case, and the notion of either experience or doing a master's degree they're not exclusive paths. And one of the things that I think we all should always be doing in building our careers is looking for any opportunity for experience. We have to live our career in lots of respects. And there are, we haven't really talked very much today about things like volunteering as an example, but organisations like RSPB, who have 20,000 volunteers, are looking for a really big array of skills, and they're also offering lots of opportunities to do lots of different things. And it's not only about being in the field, clearing ditches and carrying out practical management, it's helping with a whole set of the entire breadth of tasks that organisations like that carry out.
Okay. This is probably more directed defining. You mentioned how volunteering can be a good thing to boost your employability and skills, experience, and
that there's a lot of paid volunteering opportunities to go somewhere you can sort of for a short period of time. How would you say that they weigh against volunteering within the UK for a long period of time in say the ICT? Do they have the same takeaway?
If I was looking at on the CV of UK experience over a long period of time to win every time, because it's more relevant to the job you're doing for one. And it also shows more enthusiasm. Doesn't take a lot, especially if your parents are paying you to somewhere lovely to do a couple of weeks. Then that doesn't show as much commitment as somebody who just run out every weekend doing something for the
I think you can as well add to the richness of your career by continuing to volunteer. So that I run the Ladybird survey as a volunteer is an incredibly rich part of my life, which no one is going to pay me to run the Ladybird survey full time, and I'm not sure I want to anyway. I like to have it in combination, and also outreach activities, for instance, if you want to do a lot of going out and talking to people and getting involved in biobusiness and whatever else, you're going to have a component of volunteering about your work. So
You actually have a little question here. Do you enjoy the voluntary work or the work at the CEH?
So I enjoy doing both, and sometimes there's a bit of grey area between the two, because the data that I get from running the Ladybird survey feeds into some of my research. But I would say do a lot of work on non-native species broadly, much further beyond the Ladybird side of things, and I love doing that as well. So I can't weight any one part more than the other. Practical reason I get paid for working for CEA, so that's a small advantage, but no, I don't think I could choose. I like having the diversity, and I wouldn't get that diversity if I didn't volunteer.
I think, yeah, I think that's a really important take home, and it's something that I've done throughout my life, is volunteer, and don't think about it just as something to whack on your CV until you get to the next step that you're thinking of. Think about it, in the same way that when you think about, being physically active for your health, you think about that kind of thing in terms of the whole of your life. It's not just for this section. It's something that will enrich your life for decades, not just for a couple of years.
Okay. Do you have any other questions?
This one was for David. You said when you're thinking about policy, you don't get a lot of time to do it, and the Department of Transport isn't actually using research. So, how much science actually goes into policy decisions and policy making?
That is a good question, and of course it depends on the decision. And I was giving that as an example of something being a bit provocative, but I can think of quite a lot of decisions which were made with no science at all, and some with an enormous amount of science, and how that science is understood and how it's translated into policy decisions. I think that's one of the interesting things about working on policy. Sometimes you get the opportunity to really get yourself involved in the science, and you're trying to understand it, and other times you realize that the science isn't going to play any part in the processes of the time or the subject from someone else. But in all cases, and the more you can understand the science, the better, because policymakers on the whole don't read academic journals. They don't have a lot of time, unless it's still sometimes. There's no such thing as never. So I think in a whole environmentally political policy sphere, people who actually got that training, you can actually quite quickly grasp what the something. Also, you can see what the hazards are, what we don't know, and what implications it's not knowing are.
That question I've got about doing the favourite presentation. So you mentioned that you need ecologists in your organisation. I'm thinking, quite often you leave university at a sort of vulnerable stage when you're trying to apply for jobs, but most of them will ask you to have already a few years of experience working in a certain area. And there are few jobs advertised for that kind of entry-level position. And I was actually looking at IETV recently as well, and most of the jobs are advertised at the kind of mid-level. So I'm wondering whether the entry-level positions kind of exist, whether they are, whether they've been advertised in the same way, but perhaps, I just didn't happen to zero in on the right websites at the right time. And also, what kind of skills would, especially when you're going from research-oriented to be, which is what most universities are, what kind of skills in particular would you be looking at as an entry-level candidate to develop in addition to research?
Those are good questions. I think you're absolutely right. There are not as many entry-level jobs, not just in my organisation, but in a lot of other organisations, and that is a huge problem. And it's bad at the moment. This is for the economic reasons, essentially. As you'll be aware, a lot of organisations, including mine, have internships, and those are a good thing to apply for. I mean, maybe it shouldn't be so, but it is, because it gives you a kind of experience, it gives you work experience in some depth. And we are certainly influenced when we look at somebody's CV, whether they've done work experience somewhere else, what sort of place they've done it, whether they've been doing it. And people who've been interns with us, a large number of you get jobs, and the fact they've done it with us helps them get jobs elsewhere, and sometimes they also give them jobs, and if there's something short-term coming along, they're more likely to pick that up in industry, or you know who they are, you know what their strengths and weaknesses are, you know you're not going to have to tell them certain basics. So, I mean, there are moral quandaries about internship, and I don't want to skate over those in any way, but in terms of real life, there are realities. In terms of what we'd be looking for, we take some people, some people, it's very rare we would take anyone who hasn't got any kind of qualification. And in a perfect world, we take more. It's just that having that qualification gives you a little bit more confidence in that person's capacity for skills and the ability to sort of, although it's only a shorthand actually, if we're able to use it better, we wouldn't necessarily insist on that. And we also probably about half people coming about PhDs. But I agree with what other people say that doing PhD is not necessarily a budget, it depends on what it's in. And if you do a postgraduate degree like the one in Imperial, which is has quite a big policy component, you certainly be interested in whether you've chosen the policy options or not. If you hadn't chosen the policy options, well actually policy might be interesting after all, that's not so good on your CV as if you chose it. And we also be interested in, like happens in other career paths, volunteering, and also things that you've done. If you've written something, or you've been involved in your local theatre group, or chosen a passion to communicate, you've been involved in some sort of political thing, something really outside that shows you've got some enterprise, you've got some engagement, and a bit of not finding the world. That would be useful for us, not necessarily an academic.
Three things strike me at the heart of that question. And it is, the question is, where do I start? What is my route in the subject area? One of the major powers I think we have in the discipline of ecology, and we've heard it this morning, is that it touches so many other disciplines. So when you come from your first degree, you are actually already skilled across an extremely broad array of different subject areas. Given that the subject area is so large, if you search broadly enough, I think you will find that there are opportunities around. So breadth of search, I think, is a big opportunity for us. Second is, I think we have a corporate responsibility as ecologists all together to demonstrate societal value of the work that we do. And the resources that we have stewardship over, in the way that we feed the world, in the way we save biodiversity. And the more we demonstrate the value of what we do, the more other people will invest in our work in our subject area. And I think that's for us as a body corporate to do. But my third point is a very practical one. And it goes back to one of the things I said about being in the community. So go along to Institute of Ecology and Environmental Management conferences, for example, where so many consultants are represented, about 60% of the membership of IEM are consultants, and build your entry-level opportunities through contacts from the community.
Very quick question. This is a question to all of the panel. Looking at choices, whether to do a PhD or whether to do an MRes, for example, if you're looking at building hopefully a career in research, how would you view the next steps on the money undergrad?
I think it depends on what you want to do in research, and maybe I'm biased. I think what I said is that a PhD, at one level or another, is an entry-level qualification for a permanent career in research. Certainly if you want to take any sort of leadership role in your research. So I think at some point, if you want to do research, a PhD is something you should be seriously thinking about. Whether you go straight from a degree to a PhD is a complicated question. It's partly financial. You don't have to pay for the PhD. It's partly on the qualification you come out with, so to go straight into a PhD, you're going to need 2-1 first. It depends on how sure you are that's your route. Because potentially, as we said, masters might give you an opportunity to grow and refocus and think about other options. My own path was the PhD straight from my first degree. Others have taken different routes and found those very satisfactory. I think it's very difficult for me to give a general answer on that. I think it very much depends on your own ambitions and aspirations, financial situation.
And I think if you are going to do a PhD, you are going to have to really, really love what you're doing. And because you are going to have 3 years intensely working on the subject. And for me, it was a fantastic 3 years. I had an amazing supervisor, amazing group of people around me. I was out in the field with those getting lab skills. I was getting more statistical training through various courses. And now PhDs are really good at providing additional training, for example, science communication, statistical methods. You're not just left with a blank piece of paper and set off, but you get additional training along the way. So it's about making the most of these opportunities, but just really loving what you're doing. And then I think when you come out at the end of it, regardless of whether you decide then to become a full-time researcher or whether you go into policy or what you may wish to do, hopefully you've had a fantastic 3 years getting there.
I totally agree with both those things. I mean, bear in mind, I think Bryony said, you'll finish your PhD now. We certainly have several people who finished, have guidance PhD, really gone a long way with it, and actually, and then finished it when they came to us either quite soon or quite a bit later. So that's an option too. It doesn't always have to be completely drastic.
Yeah, I mean, I've done mine part-time. I don't know if I would recommend that or not. Some weeks I would, but at the moment I'd just like to take a bit of a break to drive mine up, in fact, because I'm at a level now where I don't really have any idea of work, so working is not really possible. But it's certainly given me lots of opportunities, and I've been really lucky over time to secure quite decent amounts of funding for my research along the way, so it's had a significant impact before it's been accomplished. But yeah, there's lots of options out there, but I think you have to do what feels right for you, really.
Okay, anything else you want to
I mean, I think it's a really interesting choice about the character of a PhD. We've all said do what you love, which is if you can find a PhD in which you love the subject area, take it. The second best is a PhD that's got a good supervisor a good subject area and leads to lots of strategic opportunities. So really, you know, there is always some degree of compromise between how close you are to your passion and what is actually practically available to you. I think if you want a research career, PhD is an absolutely critical step. And interestingly enough, the only PhD students that I've ever had out of 20-something who have been successful that haven't reached the finishing line have been part-time PhD students who started in their 20s or 30s, and they embark on something that then requires 6 or 8 or even 10 years, in which time all kinds of things in their lives can come along and alter the success of their outcome. So I think doing a PhD early in your trajectory is important. If that can't happen for all kinds of reasons, there are fallbacks, but I think it's a critically important step.
I'll just add one more thing, that not all PhDs are the same these days. There are things like case PhDs, which are done in collaboration with external organisations. They can be a very different experience. There can be PhDs funded by other organisations. I don't know if I can directly fund, but it doesn't have to be a purely academic experience. So do look at what's out there, choose the one that's right for you, if that's what you want to do.
Okay, all right, thank you. I think that's all we've got time for today. So, Laura just got something to put for lunch, so thank the panel. So